everyone, welcome to another video. If you haven't seen the previous video that I posted yesterday, then what I'm doing at the minute is a series on the mark schemes and going through what those mean, how you can use them to grade your own work, basically trying to decipher them so that they're a little bit easier to understand. So before I start, obviously there is a few things that you need to know. Obviously this video is part of a series. I've got paper 1 section A up already. This is going to be paper 1 section B, and then hopefully tomorrow I'll be posting paper 2 in its entirety. I am also very, very sorry about the sound. For some reason, even though I'm using the exact same mic, it's just not as good. There's nothing I can do about that, and the video took me nearly 2 hours to record, so I really don't want to re-record it at the moment. Obviously, as I improve the channel and as I get better equipment, then this is something that I'll look at re-recording and editing as we go through. It's also worth noting that I am not an examiner, so if anything that I say in this then gets clarified by an examiner, or if I become an examiner and I have more information, then I'll be popping details of that in the description box below and letting you guys know on social media if and when I do that. I also want to say a big thank you to Erin for suggesting this video. If you have any suggestions for videos, please pop them in the comments section below or get in touch with me through my social media, either Twitter or Instagram. I'm also not going to be signing off at the end of the video, so if you want to subscribe, if you'd like a shout out at the beginning of every video, then please pop a comment in the comment section below or subscribe, hit the button below, and if you hit the bell icon next to it, you'll get instant notifications every time I post a new video. Okay, let's get into paper 1 section B. Okay, so we're on section B. This should be fairly quick. Naming the organisation that regulates Britain is 1 mark. You either know it or you don't. Okay, for 3B, give 2 other examples of age certificates. Again, you either know them or you don't. If you only give 1 from this, you're only going to get 1 mark. Okay. Interestingly, you can mention R18 as well, which is typically the rating that's given for porn. You can mention that in here as well. That's fine. But don't mention 12 and 12A. Okay, explaining the difference between the 12 and 12A certificates. This needs a bit more explanation. We don't have indicative content for this, so you're only using the grid, just the same as these. You're only using the grids for these. Right, so you would get 1 mark for any explanation that includes 1 certificate, and this is the difference here. The difference between 1 mark and 2 marks is that 1 mark for 1 age certificate, 2 marks for both. So if you mention both age certificates, you get 2 marks. If you mention 1, you only get 1 mark. Okay, that's basically it. Okay, 3D. Why a film is given 12A or 12, okay, and we're referring to Spectre here. Your marks are split up into 3s, groups of 3s, so you've got band 1, 2, 3, 4. It's very similar to what we've looked at already. Basic knowledge means basic marks. Satisfactory knowledge, satisfactory marks. So you get your first set or your first point. By the way, it's not 1 mark per bullet point either. It's like they look at it on the whole, which you might hear your teachers refer to as a holistic mark. They look at the whole thing rather than going, right, what level of knowledge do they have? Where are they? What reference to the set product do they have? Where are they? Okay. You do need to comment on, as well as this knowledge of the industry and regulation, you have to reference the set product. If you don't reference the set product, you're down here. Okay. And then basic terminology. So in this answer, you need knowledge and understanding of regulation in film. You need references to the set product to support your points, and that has to be thorough, so it can't just be as seen in Spectre, full stop. You've got to mention where, give specifics. Okay. Highly appropriate use of subject specific terminology. So using key terms wherever possible and making sure that they are accurate. Okay, now we do have indicative content here, it's quite small. Oh, we go over the other page. Again, not prescriptive. Responses are expected to discuss the classification guidelines, specifically 12.12a. Higher bands will move beyond that to consider certification in the film industry in terms of reaching wider audiences. You should be using knowledge and understanding of Spectre, but it should not be a textual analysis of the film. So it shouldn't be, and then in the film this happens, and then in the film this happens. You can say, for example, that initially Spectre was going to be given a 15 due to scenes such as eye gouging and suicide, but we're not going to just blatantly describe the film. Okay, so here are the points that you would get. You need to comment on the BBFC as the regulator. That's really simplistic. Use of regulations, so why we have these regulations. So this is a why point. The requirements for and the distinction between age certificates. Now, it's quite important to consider what makes a film a 15 compared to what makes it a 12 compared to what makes it a PG. So I would look at the differences. Because Spectre's a 12.12a, look at the age certificates either side of it, and then you'll be able to understand why it's been given that certificate. Okay. Aspects of the film that raise regulatory issues. So moderate violence and threat, that's the bit that deals with sort of eye gouging, etc. Relationship between films, distributors and regulators. So the idea that in order to distribute to a wider audience, you need to appease the BBFC. How distributors may make cuts to a film. Okay, so that sort of links to this bit up here. The fact that the producers of Spectre decided to cut certain scenes to get it into that category, compared to including them and running with a larger or a more older age certificate. How the film industry operates as a commercial industry. Distributors aim to reach large audiences. The importance of attaining desired certification to maximise audience numbers and profits. So 12.12a being a huge age range, particularly that 12a. The idea that you can suddenly target a whole new audience with parental permission is quite important. Okay, which radio station broadcasts The Archers? Again, you either know it or you don't. You will get credited for either BBC Radio 4 or just Radio 4. You have to mention Radio 4. BBC alone won't get it. Identify one audience for The Archers. Now, this is really important because this question links to... I wonder if I can display them together. Okay, we're going to do a bit of shuffling around. Okay. Okay. This question, 4b, links to 4c. Okay, so 4b, any valid audience could be credited. If your audience doesn't fit in here, but it's relevant, you'll still get the mark. Valid responses are credited for this part of the question regardless of what you write here. So your papers, I think they should be marked in order. Having never been an examiner, I'm not sure. The way that the English questions work, I know, is that they will distribute individual questions to different examiners. So they're either answered in order, or like an examiner might choose to mark all of 4Bs and then go on to 4Cs. Like, basically, anything you mention here, if it's valid, will be given a mark. Okay. For this question though, okay, so for 4C, this question is linked to 4B. If you don't mention the audience who you talked about in 4B, you will not get the mark. Okay, and that's what it says here. So no marks should be awarded for explanations of how the Archers is aimed at a different audience from that in 4B. Okay, so you really have to be reading those questions so carefully, because it's such an easy trap to fall into. Okay, but if you are asked about the audience you have identified, and they've even put it in bold to make it stand out for you, if you are asked about that, you've got to mention it. Talking about a different audience won't get you the marks, and that's why I like to break down the audience in as much detail as possible for 4B. Okay, so if your answer to 4B said that the audience for the Archers were an older demographic who listened to Radio 4 regularly and were higher up in the socio-economic groups such as A or B on the ABC1 system, you would then have 3 different points to talk about here. If you only say that it's an older audience, you're going to limit this question. You might find it harder. Okay? You get, again, up to two marks here for each explanation. Obviously, because you're looking at 2 ways, you get 2 marks for each way that you comment on. So if all you do is state a reason, you're only going to get 1 mark. If you give a detailed explanation, you're going to get 2. So this one is mostly down to how much detail you give. So you see here, the first point here, older demographic or audience because it's a long-running program. The explanation, or the detailed explanation, is that it's aimed at an older demographic because it's a long-running program which was first broadcast in 1950, so it creates a loyal fan base who have perhaps listened to it as part of a tradition. Okay? All right. 4D. Why audiences listen to the Archers. Again, your marks are split into groups of 3 here, and we've got 3 bullet points per band that we're looking for, but we're not going, okay, well, this will get you 1 mark, this will get you 1 mark, this will get, that's not how it works. It's a holistic look. So the first thing we're looking for is your knowledge of audiences in relation to the Archers. We're then looking at how you understand our audiences and why they use products, particularly the Archers, and then reference to uses and gratifications theory and terminology. Okay, so you have to mention audiences of the Archers, why they use the Archers, and how that links to uses and gratifications, mentioning that terminology. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing that it's reasonable to expect to be in the top bands. Okay, again, some of you may need to work a little bit harder or put a little bit more time in to get there, but it's not out of reach for people. It's not out of reach for you at all. Okay, so again, indicative content, we've got this whole italicized bit up at the top here. Content's not prescriptive. All answers should be credited. Okay, so higher bands will move beyond the obvious and straightforward and consider aspects such as audience needs with reference to uses and gratifications. You're provided with the opportunity to draw together knowledge and understanding from across your course of study. Okay, so this bit is quite important. That doesn't mean you bring in things like Pride or GQ, but what it means is that you think about the other parts of the key concepts, so the other parts of the theoretical framework, your theorists, your terminology, all of that. Okay, so that's what the higher bands will do. What I'll do here is indicate just where the straightforward answers are. We're not necessarily looking at straightforward or complex, but we'll pick out the ones that are straightforward. Answers are likely to demonstrate knowledge and understanding of the theoretical framework of media with specific references to audiences, use and gratifications theory in the set product, for example, the role of media technologies in reaching the audience, such as digital forms of exhibition, the impact of convergence and cross-platform opportunities for audiences to access the programme, ideas of fandom and the community of loyal fans for the archers who have invested in the programme over many years, obvious. Role and pleasure of radio, how it can fit into the audience's lives and homes in a variety of ways, including portability, ease and access, and use as background sound. Importance of identity, audiences may listen to the archers because it's connected to their identity. Importance of themes and issues addressed in the archers, such as domestic abuse. Okay, so on the one hand, this is obvious, particularly if you have studied the Helen and Rob episode. But if you haven't studied that episode, then it might not be as straightforward. Uses and gratifications theory, audiences actively choose to listen to the archers to fulfill their need for. Okay, this is the most obvious one out there. Our answers in the higher bands may draw together knowledge and understanding of other areas of the theoretical framework. For example, historical context of the archers and its social and cultural significance to the audiences of the world's longest running radio soap. Possibly. Narrative appeal in the form of audiences. That maybe not. It is, in a way, it's sort of obvious. It's sort of obvious because you talk about how they've got engaging storylines, but if you're mentioning things like the multi-stranded narratives, the enigma codes, then you're going into more complex analysis. How generic conventions of radio soap operas engage audiences through aspects such as typicality, variation, repertoire. That would be more complex. Maybe not. How the archers has changed over time to remain contemporary. It could be a bit of both. I think I'm going to leave it as complex. How the BBC uses distribution marketing strategies to reach audiences. No, I'll leave that.